to Interpreting the Scares. That's right, I'm back at it with yet another rendition of Interpreting the Scares. I think that this is probably about the third annual Interpreting the Scares event. Not entirely sure, but once again, I'll be taking a look at a different horror film every single day of October. And because I had a hard time choosing specifically 31 movies, Halloween might actually have 4 or 5 reviews. Not sure at this point. Every year, though, I like to follow a certain theme. Last year, I reviewed 31 movies, yeah, but I did so where I reviewed entire horror franchises that just so happened to equal out to 31 movies. This year, I thought I'd focus specifically on standalone horror movies that never received a sequel. I also wanted to note that for me, it's actually April 4th. I'm pretty busy these days to release a new review every single day, so I'm doing this way in advance. So by the time Halloween rolls around, I'm hopefully caught up at that point. So to plan this month out, I'm watching these movies in ascending popularity. So from least popular to most popular, at least in general. So I'm starting with 2019's Itsy Bitsy. Let's get cracking. Itsy Bitsy ultimately follows around a single mother and her 2 children as she takes up a new position as caretaker for an elderly antiques collector who has just received a mysterious black egg with a fabled past. When said egg is dropped and broken, an ancient and giant spider emerges and wreaks havoc on these poor souls. What a start for the month. I tell you what, I don't like spiders. I don't. I mean, in terms of personal fears that I have, they gotta do with ghosts, tornadoes, and 8-legged freaks. I've gotten to a point in my life where if I see one, I ignore it, thinking that if I don't bother it, it probably won't bother me. Now, to be completely honest with you, I think that this is the very first time that I've ever seriously made an effort to watch a horror movie about a spider. Not that there's a lot of them out there. Half of the movies about spiders are satirical comedies that make fun of older horror films, but this was more of a modern approach for a spider film, and I'd be lying if I said that it didn't creep me out, because it did, but I think it'll only really be super effective if the audience already has some kind of arachnophobia built in. Movies like this are already kind of tacky. You don't expect the story to be very good, and honestly, the story in Itsy Bitsy is laughably bad. Anytime that they try to explain the history or the foundation of what this spider is, why it's evil, I mean, the Native American tribe, the human sacrifices to a spider goddess, all of that just makes this movie sound ridiculous, sounds stupid. Then again, you're not watching it for the story, are you? You know pretty well that they needed something to fill in the time between when the spider is going around stalking this family. Before the scares could really get going, they had to fill it with something. I mean, did they pick the best story? No, not at all. But it's fine for what it is, because where it lacks in story, it certainly makes up for in visuals. So the director of Itsy Bitsy is a guy named Micah Gallo, who I'm pretty sure you probably never heard about before, but that's probably because this is his first and so far only real attempt at writing or directing a feature film. However, he has a much more extensive resume in terms of visual effects. That's where you would normally find him working. And when you think about that, you start to realize that, that's not a bad thing at all. You kind of want decent visuals for a spider film. If nothing else, you want the audience to believe that what they're looking at is indeed a spider and not some kind of rendered 3D CGI creature. Because we've all seen examples of bad CGI creatures, and the CGI in Itsy Bitsy is actually pretty strong. It doesn't look incredible or perfect 100% of the time, like whenever the spider's doing something a spider wouldn't naturally do, for instance, but any natural movement that the spider makes was believable, and most importantly, it was creepy. So there's actually a moment in this movie where a character ends up getting hurt or paralyzed or something. They end up on their back. And from the ceiling, you see this giant spider slowly lowering on its web towards the character, but most importantly, towards the audience, staring directly back at it. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't sinking back in my seat a little bit as it got closer. This movie was effectively creepy. It got under my skin a bit as a general non-fan of spiders. I also appreciated that even though that this spider was giant, it wasn't eight-legged freaks giant, it was slightly bigger than a cat giant. Which is perfect. That's a lot more believable. Any bigger than that, you're talking more sci-fi comedy level. This was just right, Goldilocks. Overall, I think that this is a movie that mostly works the best for those of you that have a natural fear of spiders. We spider haters don't really think about how or why the spider got in the house. Our only real concern is that it did, and what we do now. So in the same breath, I also don't exactly care about the backstory of the spider in this movie either. Again, they needed something. Otherwise, the movie would be really freaking short and not make a lot of sense. But for what it was, this was a creature feature that did effectively crawl under my skin and get me in the mood for the rest of the month. It's a very good icebreaker in terms of horror. So, breaking down my final score for a second, I have to acknowledge that the story, it's not the greatest in the world. It's laughable at times, really, but the visuals were solid. And I think those two things kind of balance each other out. And because the visuals are primarily one of the main reasons you watch a movie like this, I think that they stand out as the better technical advantage, so this unbiased score is 72%. When it comes down to my bias score, just how I personally felt about the movie, I've said it a couple times now, but it crawled under my skin. Thank God I barely ever remember my dreams nowadays, or I feel like I'd have spider nightmares. It is a bit corny though, and nothing that is solid enough to remember for the rest of my life. But in the moment, it's fun. This score is 76%, meaning that when we combine the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 74%. 74 out of 100 possible stars, or a B- letter grade, kick-starting off this month the right way. As for you fellers, have you seen Itsy Bitsy? Do you have a fear of spiders? Let me know in the comments down below, and as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.